Hello everyone, my name is Kwan. I am in charge at the payroll department here at Community CPA. Today we are going to cover a fast fact about hiring an employee in the restaurant environment, what information you should know, what information you should be aware before you start hiring that first employee at the restaurant. Couple information about our firm. Our firm has been in the business for over 26 years. We currently have 4 locations in the United States, one in Des Moines, Iowa City, Minneapolis, and Capitola. We are about to have a new location joining us soon in the late summer, and that's going to be in Houston, Texas. Our CEO is currently have 2 books out there that you can check out. Is talking about her experience in the business as a business owner, and it will bring through you through the life story that she has while she's been with the Community CPA for these 26 years. And lastly, just keep in mind, this presentation is more of knowledge sharing. We hope that this presentation will help you to grow your business and learn as much as you can. And keep in mind, we do not take any responsibility of any advice that we have given during this presentation. So now let's start. So when we're talking about wages and income, first thing you want to keep in mind that the department who are responsible to make sure that all the wages and income are being paid correctly to the employee are Department of Labor. So Department of Labor has come out with the Standard Labor, Fair Labor Standard Act, which we usually call FALSA. This FALSA is covering main 5 requirements that every employer you should have. So we talk about minimum wage. As employer, you should know what are the minimum wage requirements. Second is overtime. What is the requirement for overtime? Hours. How do you keep track of the hours worked? Record keeping. What information you should keep? What information you should have? And then lastly, poster. So let's talk about number 1, minimum wage. Keep in mind, every employer must pay every employee at least the federal minimum wage of the hours worked. But keep in mind, some state has the higher minimum wage requirement. The employer are required to follow whichever number is higher, but cannot be lower than the federal minimum wage. Overtime. A lot of time, clients are confusing of how you actually keep track of overtime. So for example, you have a bi-weekly payroll, meaning you're getting paid every 2 weeks. The requirement on overtime is based on the weekly basis, which is mean in a work week, if you're working from Monday to Friday, your total work week should be 40. Anything that is above 40, you need to pay overtime. The overtime pay rate is at 1.5 times the regular rate that you usually pay the employees. Okay, so how about work hours? If you have employees who do multiple jobs, multiple locations, the work hour is pretty much covered the time that the employees is in your building, or when you send them out to work on other things that they have to. So pretty much any time that they actually work for you, those are your work hours. Record keepings. You must keep your employees' information, time cards, payroll record for a minimum of 5 years. That include time cards, clock in, clock out, if you have clock in, clock out machine, POS record that you have track of how they log in their time, how they keep track of their tips if you're in the restaurant environment. And lastly, poster. The poster can be printed out from the Department of Labor website, or you can purchase from a third party, and it need to be posted where everyone can see. You cannot hide this poster in the manager office. It need to be a common area that all the employees share. For example, if you have a locker room, if you have a lunch area where the employee eat, you can post the poster there. So that way they are aware of the minimum wage requirement over time and what are the FALSA's requirement as an employer and employees. Another question that I usually get from most of my clients is about child labor. So what do you do with them? You have kids, they want to work. What are the requirements? So I have break it down to 3 categories for you here. So number 1, if they're 18 and older, keep in mind, they can work at anywhere, anytime. So there's no other requirements, no no limitation on where they can work, what they can do, and how many hours they can work, 18 to older. If they're 16 to 17, they can work at many hours that they want, but only the job that is not pose danger to the minor. So for example, in the kitchen, if you have a minor who want to work in the kitchen, you know that in the kitchen area, especially where the pan, the deep fryer are considered to be a dangerous area. So those areas will not be allowed for the minor to go in and then work in the station. They can help packaging the food, serving the food, or help at the cashier. If you have 14 to 15 years old wanting to work with you, you know that this age is around the school age area. So there is a requirement of how many hours they can work between the school time and off the school time. During the school period, they only can work 3 hours a day on the school day, up to 18 hours a week. Okay? But if they're in the summertime, just like now, they can work 8 hours a day, up to 40 hours a week. And they can start working from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on the school period. Off the school period, they can work from 7 to 9 p.m. So let's come closer to what are the requirements for FAFSA to the restaurant and fast food business. So keep in mind, FAFSA requirements are mandated for any employer who has $500,000 gross revenue. This raw of minimum wage and overtime are mandated for those companies. And this law and requirement are for people who working for you. That include waiter, waitress, host, bartender, chef, kitchen staff, busboy, busser, and cashier who handle the credit card transaction. The federal requirement has a minimum wage of 7.25 dollars per hour. And if the employee receives tips, they must be paid a direct tip wage of $2.13 per hour. Okay. The deduction that made from the items such as cash shortage, required uniform, consumer walkout are illegal if it has bring down that minimum wage below $7.25 per hour or cut into the overtime pay. And tips considered to be part of wages, but the employer must make sure that the amount of tips received is enough to meet that minimum wage requirement. And you might be asking who would be covered under the tips employee, right? The tip employee is pretty much who normally regularly receive tip at least $30 a month in tips. So what happened? What's problem now? Okay. So keep in mind, with minimum wage, we need to make sure that any deduction that you mandate to the employee, like I mentioned earlier, uniform cost, if you have a cash shortage at the end of the day, that those deductions cannot go below the minimum wage. And very important here, keep in mind that each state has different minimum wage requirement. Federal is just the standard minimum for that's set out there. So if you have a state that have a higher minimum wage, you must follow the state minimum wage requirement. You cannot pay the employee lower than the state minimum wage. And I have posted the link for each state requirement here, so that way you can deep down into the requirement for each of your state. Another typical problem that we usually see with the restaurant is that employer, manager, supervisor cannot keep tips. Okay, I know that's like, oh, what? So keep in mind, FAFSA really kind of prohibit the employer from keeping any portion of the employee tips for any reason, whether it's directly or in the tips pool. So let's give a couple examples. Okay, so let's go down to the manager and supervisor first. Who are they? Why? What they need to do to consider themselves to be a manager, supervisor at the business location. So for the manager and supervisor are those who primary duty is managing the company, department or subdivision of the company, whose customary and regularly direct the work for at least 2 or more full-time employees, who has authority to hiring, firing, the employees. So those people are considered to be manager, and they should not be receiving a tips or share the tips on the tips pool. The business owner is pretty much straightforward. If you are the business owner who own at least 20% of the interest of the company, you are considered to be a business owner, and you're considered to fall under the same requirement as manager and supervisor, that the only time you can claim tips from the employee is when you directly receive tip from the customer and you're directly serve and solely provide that service to the customer. Okay, keep in mind, for example, if you have manager who kind of help you at the hosting area where you have to go pick up and to go order, and if the to go customer give you a tips, because you're the one just standing there, you cannot take the tips, because that means other people in the restaurant is helping you to gather the package and hand it to the customer. Okay, so when the only time you can receive tip is when you directly serve the table or provide that service directly to the customer without anyone else in the restaurant that helping you. How about tips pool? FALSA allows the employer to require employee to share or post the tip within the eligible employees. They do not provide a fixed percentage how much you have to share. So those one is more of up to the employer to decide how the tips pool is going to work. How about record keepings? Keep in mind, each week the employee who need to report the work hours with you, they need to be able to report how they claim tips, whether on the weekly, monthly basis. They need to be able to come up with a report to show you how much tips they receive from the customer, how many hours you work each day. How many hours the employee work each day. So those are the record requirements that as employer you should have. Like I said, whether it's on a weekly basis, monthly basis, you need to be able to produce how many hours the worker work each day, okay? And then how much tips and wages they receive during that period of time. A lot of our clients now is using a POS system. I believe you do too. And with the POS system offer a lot of function that as an employer might not have realized it. The employer actually can really use POS system to replace their clock in, clock out. Because every time when the employees ring in the cells, ring out the cell, go out from the tips, closing out the POS system, so those can be used as a substitute of the time clock. So learn how to use that POS system, learn how to set up. The most important part that I see a lot of our clients struggling is you're not getting your POS system set up properly. So that way when the employer receives the tip, they don't lock the tips. They don't lock when their work hours is. So as the employer, one more thing that you can do to really tighten your standard requirement on record keeping is to make sure you have your POS system properly set up. Use the POS system to really mandate the employee to clock in, clock out during the break time, off the break time, and then prohibit your employee from sharing the POS login system. Some POS allow you to do the ID card that you can swipe. So make sure that those information are not being shared among the employees. So that way you have a strictly record of how much earning, how much tips, and then how much hour each employee's work. Reconcile and review those employee tips claim versus the POS tips report at the end of the year. So I believe that at the end of the year, your employees or the server who receive the tips usually will come and ask for the tips for you. So as part of record keeping, you want to make sure that the information between what you have in the POS system and what information that provided by the employee are matched before you actually hand out those tips. Print out that POS report or back up that database on the regular basis. I believe that technology change, so sometimes you might have switched the POS system and you might have lost that those old records. So try to do this on a regular basis, whether you print out the actual report or back up those database. So that way, you keep in mind your record keeping is 5 years. So as long as you, even though you switch the POS system around, you still have those record available and handy at any time. So pretty much that is for all my presentation today. If you decide to learn more, you can search our YouTube channel, or you can schedule a what we call a discovery call with each of the partners here at the firm. And if you have more information and would like to learn more about other topics, feel free to contact Catherine here at catherine@communitycpa.com. So that way she can arrange and make sure your wish come true. Thank you for joining us for the seminar today, and then hope you have a great day.